In this elective module, we're going to discuss the significance of a set of leadership values, partly as an understanding of what this means for your own behavior as a leader, but also partly as an understanding of what this means for setting a standard for the people working for you. In a sense, setting a standard is in two themes. We indicated that empowering people means to give them the means to do what's required of them, to make them able to do what's required of them, and to hold them accountable. We indicated that under the issue of means, there's the problem of providing standards. Now, standards in this instance is in two senses. First of all, a standard can be understood to be clarifying expectations required of the subordinate. In other words, what's required of you. The second issue of what standards are concerned with are really the fundamental do's and don'ts in the organization or in the team, the fundamental values that are operative in the team. Now, in our experience, there's a core set of leadership values that are operative really in any organization. And the reason why it's important to understand what they are and how they operate is based on our previous understanding of what giving means. We argued that giving is not about being nice, it's about being appropriate. So we indicated, for example, that if a hungry child asks you for food, the appropriate thing to do is to give the child food. We also indicated, on the other hand, that if a thug beats an old lady for a handbag, then the appropriate thing to do is to beat up the thug. So if one looked at these two instances from a purely behavioral point of view, one almost has a contradiction, because in the case of dealing with a child, your behavior was nice and kind when you were giving, and when you looked at the issue of the thug, your behavior was hard and confrontative. But that's also appropriate. So giving isn't about being nice, it's about being appropriate, and it's in two classes. The quality that you require, for example, to give the child food is generosity. And the quality that you require to confront the thug is courage. If we argue that giving is not about being nice, it's about acting consistently with the generosity or the courage that's operative in the situation that you're in, we also indicated, therefore, that taking is about getting your logic wrong. In other words, if a hungry child asks you for food and you slap the child, this is not a measure of your courage, this is a measure of your selfishness. And if the thug is beating the little old lady, and you grab the little old lady's handbag and give it to the thug, this is not a measurement of your generosity, it's a measurement of your cowardice. Which means to say that if the situation requires generosity and you act in a so-called courageous way, you're not giving, you're taking, we call that selfishness. On the other hand, if the situation requires courage and you act in a so-called generous way, you're not giving, you're taking, we call that cowardice. Now, the reason, therefore, why we have to refract down to the level of generosity and courage is that although the term giving is true, it's in a sense too abstract, it's too high order, and one can get it wrong. One has to understand that giving is not about being nice, it's about being appropriate. In a sense, though, just like the term giving is too abstract, the terms generosity and courage are also, in a sense, too abstract. They're not particularly helpful in terms of decoding exactly what one should do in a particular situation. And let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, that you meet a woman whose husband has just been killed in a car crash. And nobody on the planet knows that this person's husband is dead. You're the only person who knows that her husband is dead. Clearly, the appropriate thing to do in a situation like that is to tell the woman. And the quality that requires of you is courage. This is not going to be an easy interaction. Now, the question is, will this be a similar kind of courage to that which you evidenced in the park when dealing with a little old lady? I mean, are you likely to grab the woman by the front of her blouse and slap her around the head as you're telling her that her husband is dead? That's probably unlikely. Which means to say that courage doesn't necessarily mean confrontative behavior. Just like generosity doesn't necessarily mean being nice, because one can sensibly speak of the generosity of the surgeon's knife, for example, which suggests that there's a level missing between generosity and courage. We need to understand, if we need to understand exactly what to do in a particular situation, how we should behave and act, we need to, in a sense, understand what the values are that are operative in the situation that we're in. So there's a level missing between the abstract level of generosity and courage and how you actually behave and act. And that level is the level of values. From a leadership point of view, the very specific values that are operative in a leadership situation. In a sense, giving in a leadership situation means that you act consistently with the generosity and the courage that's operative in that situation, which means you act consistently with the leadership value that's operative in the situation that you're in. In our experience, there are 8 core leadership values that are operative in leadership or command situations. And these are honesty, consistency, care, growth, fairness, humility, trust, and respect. In the course of this process, we're going to examine the degree to which your own behavior is consistent with those values, and in a sense where your own growth points would be if you wanted to sharpen your own leadership practice and get your own leadership intent and values more consistent with the requirements of care and growth.